Hello, Algebra 2 students. This is Lesson 50. Our objective is, how do you complete the square to solve quadratic equations? So we've been working with quadratic equations. Our first ones were ones like this, where we factored. And said, oh, this is x plus 2, x minus 1. So that means this is equal to 0, that's equal to 0, and you solve, so negative 2 or 1. So those are our two answers that we got. Or sometimes we got some like this. Which were just more recent, a couple lessons ago, I think 48, where we're like, oh, if we have something squared equals a number, you can say, oh, this is equals to the plus or minus square root, right? If you take the square root of both sides, then you add 3, so x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 5, which is really just 3 plus the square root of 5, or 3 minus the square root of 5. So again, we got two answers for that. But what if we had something like this? X squared plus 2x minus 5 is equal to 0. Well, it's not in this form, so I can't solve it that way. But it also is not factorable. I can't do my method that I used before. Well, that's where it comes today, and that's where we're going to be completing the square. In order to do that, we need to recognize a pattern real quick first. This is actually from your book on page 214 to something close to 214. Notice I just took a couple binomials like this, x plus 2, x minus 5, x minus 6, etc., and they just squared them. So the first, outer, inner, last, they FOILed, and they got this expression. Okay? And then we tried to find a pattern between these green numbers and these yellow numbers. Here's these yellow numbers, and we found that if you took this middle number, divided it by 2, and then squared it, you get this n number. See that? 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. Gives you that one. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Well, technically this would be negative 5. Negative 5 squared gives you 25. 12 over 2 is negative 6. Negative 6 squared is 36, that number. And the same pattern holds all the way through. So we realize that if we have this form, x squared plus bx plus b over 2 squared, will factor to this. Okay, and then that'll put it back in that method that we learned a couple lessons ago. So we use this right here to what we call complete the square. Complete the square. So let's see if we can try and use that here to solve some of these. This is that one we were dealing with earlier. To complete the square, what we want to do is we want to get everything with x's on one side and all the constants on the other. So I'm just going to add 5. And I'll end up with x squared plus 2x, and yes, I'm purposely leaving a space, equals 5. So notice this number right here is that one by the x, or the b. So that's what I'm going to do now is I'm going to say b, which is 2, and divide it by 2 and square it, because remember my method was b over 2 squared, so that's what I did. My b is 2. So 2 over 2 is 1, 1 squared is 1. So I have made up this number using this cool method, and I'm going to add it to both sides. Plus 1, plus 1. Now notice that I can actually factor this left-hand side, because this is going to be an x and an x, a plus 1 and a plus 1. And the right-hand side now becomes 6. The left-hand side will factor into x plus 1 squared, because there's 2 of them, is equal to 6. And now I know how to solve it. This is going to be x plus 1 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 6. Coming over here to where there's more room. X is equal to negative 1 plus or minus the square root of 6. Okay, just kind of going back to that method we already knew how to do. Let's try another one. Same idea here. X squared minus 5x, because I subtracted 5x from both sides. Leaving space equals negative 5. So again, that's b right here. So I'm going to say negative 5 over 2 squared. Negative 5 over 2 squared comes out to be 25 over 4. Not necessarily a pretty number because it's going to give us some decimal, but I can add that number here. Add 25 over 4. plus 25 over 4. So I'm adding that number, the number I made up, to both sides. Now this left-hand side is going to factor to x minus 5 over 2. X minus 5 over 2. Set that number right in there. And then this is going to be what? If I multiply this by 4 over 4, negative 20 over 4, plus 25 over 4. This is going to be x minus 5 over 2 squared. It's going to equal to 5 over 4. So x minus 5 over 2 is equal to the plus or minus square root of 5 over 4. Again, coming over here where I have more room. X minus 5 over 2 is going to equal to plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. Guys, remember the square root of 5 over 4 is the same thing as the square root of 5 over the square root of 4. And the square root of 4 is just 2. So I got that. Then I'm going to add 5 over 2 to both sides. So x is equal to 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 2. We don't really have to calculate those. Those are the exact answers there. Let's do one more. So we're going to get everything with x's together. So x squared minus 9x, leaving space, is equal to negative 7. So then I'm going to calculate negative 9 over 2. Squared is going to give me 81 over 4. So I'm going to add 81 over 4 plus 81 over 4 to both sides. Simplifying down, this left-hand side is going to factor to x minus 9 over 2. Again, I got that from right in there. It's minus signs because this is a negative. If it was a positive, those would be positive signs. This is going to equal to, if I multiply this by 4 over 4, negative 28 over 4 plus 81 over 4 is equal to 53 over 4. X minus 9 over 2 squared. So x minus 9 over 2 is going to equal to the plus or minus square root of 53 over 2. That's really a horrible 3, but just bear with me. And that's because the square root of 4 on the denominator is 2. Plus 9 over 2. End up with x is equal to 9 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 53 over 2. Okay, your homework is a worksheet again. Don't hesitate to back this up. I went through it pretty quickly, but don't feel bad or stupid to back this up and watch it again. I've done this a lot of times, so it's okay to have to watch it again or again and again to see where I'm getting these numbers and working this out. Okay, good luck. Ask questions as you need it.